Hey guys, Matt Bell here with the Electric Violin Shop. Today we're talking about pedal boards and how to build a pedal board and what are some tips that you might want to consider when you're putting yours together. So we called in a bunch of experts. We called in Rob Flax and Cassandra Sotos and Shana Tucker and Joe Deninzon, and these are some of the tips that they gave to us.
My advice first and foremost would be decide if you need a pedal board at all. You might not need a full dedicated pedal board. You might only want one pedal. In which case, all you need is your violin into that single pedal, powered with a power supply into an adapter, or maybe even a battery, and then that going into your amp. In which case, that's great. Done. Suppose you want more than one effect, though. This is where things get cumbersome. So if you have 3 or 4 or 5 or more pedals that you like, and you've decided I want to use all of these in one sitting, you might not want to have to plug in 5 power adapters and a bunch of new cables every night. I used to do this when I was starting out. I would plug in increasingly large numbers of pedals scattered haphazardly all over the floor, and it was a mess. It just didn't work. It made my setup time on stages impractical. And finally, I figured out, if you just strap them all down to one board that's got power wired up permanently, all you have to do is plug in and plug out. And it's sort of like one big mega pedal. That makes
Very
it.
much. Yep.
Now, some of these pedals are common and easy to find. Most of these are fancy schmancy things that I spent too much time reading about and decided I wanted. But the functions of what's here is a decent suggested signal chain order. Right here, we have a pedal that does EQ, compression, and there's a boost. All in one pedal, which is very, very handy. This is almost like 3 in 1. But it's sort of my general sound shaping thing. I plug the pickup in. The pickup doesn't sound exactly how I want. I want some EQ pretty early in the chain to just get my signal conditioned and sounding decent. This is a phaser pedal. I love phaser. It's just a slow, swooshy modulation that makes everything sound cool. I think of Jean-Luc Ponty when I think of phaser. And this one just has one knob. How fast does it go? That's the only control you need on a phaser as far as I'm concerned. This is a distortion pedal. It's a fancy take on the Proco Rat. It's a little bit smoother than the Rat and does low gain a little better. You would love this pedal. The 1981 Inventions DRV. Check it out. It comes in a lot of beautiful colors. And then I'm going into a chorus. And this is made by Thorpe Effects, Adrian Thorpe. I met him when I was at the NAMM show in California, plugged into this thing, and it sounded awesome. So I had to buy it. It's very expensive, but I know the guy now, so I feel like I have a connection. And then at the end, I have my delay and reverb. This is the Electro-Harmonix Grand Canyon. This also has a looper built in. So usually I'll have delay and looper, and maybe not so much reverb. Maybe I have an amp that has spring reverb in it anyway, so I can use that. And that gets me through the gig. You'll notice that these pedals are on there pretty good. I use pedalboard tape, industrial strength Velcro, mono-directional. It sticks to itself, and the grip on this thing is actually stronger than the adhesive on the back sometimes. And then everything is wired up using little cables. I have a mix and match of a few cables. In general, the shorter the cable, the better. Right. You don't want a lot of excess dangling around here.
Then you've got a power supply underneath.
Yes, underneath I have this. This is made by a company called Mission Engineering. This is their 529. This is actually powerable by USB. So it takes 5-volt USB. Here's the absurdly long USB cable here, right? So I could power this whole pedal board off a USB port. 9 times out of 10, though, I just plug it in like a regular thing. The idea was this could be entirely portable and not be plugged into a wall. Useful in certain outdoor situations or busking situations.
Indeed.
Worth mentioning, the arrangement of the pedals on the board does not have to be the same as the signal flow. You can go under the hood and wire up a bunch of different things in alternate orders and sort of zigzag your way around there. So plan the order of which pedal plugs into what, and then plan the layout of how far apart they need to be. You may have to buy slightly longer cables if you're zigzagging back and forth a lot, so there's a balancing act, but taking care of your pedal board is important. There's a lot of signal chain troubleshooting if one cable goes bad. I have some recommendations for videos and links for people to look for if they're learning more about that stuff. The Rig Doctor has a great video on troubleshooting your rig if something goes wrong. But I cannot recommend this enough. I know we rag on guitarists all the time here, but check out these two guitarists on YouTube. It's called That Pedal Show. They have years done so many in-depth explorations of how to build a pedal board, what your signal flow needs to be, what current and power and isolation and all the nitty-gritty tech stuff. And they'll also go and shoot out two very similar pedals and see which one they like more for an hour. Right. It's so in-depth, deep dives. I got a college degree just watching their videos. So even though it's guitar stuff, if we can grin and bear it, I bet you will learn something. And I just ended up accidentally also starting learning guitar too.
Man, I learned most of what I know from guitar players.
The very first step in building a pedal board, and I'll just go ahead and qualify it and say finding your tone, is number one, start with a really good signal. And the way that I achieve that, which is I know not going to be the way that everybody does, because there's a lot of folks out there using simulation and things like that, is that I always start my pedal board with a preamp. So I use the Fishman Platinum Pro EQ, and then I plug my pedals through the effects loop. I don't do a ton of EQing, but I do a little bit on the Fishman, on that preamp, just to make sure that it's strong, it's there, there's nothing severely lacking or severely overshot. And then I start with the pedals.
You've got everything mounted on an actual board, right?
So to be honest, like I would, but I have been over the last couple of years flying a lot, so I take it apart and I suitcase it, and then I put it back together. One thing about that, what I would recommend to somebody is find some of those points on the preamp and the EQ if they're using that and that first pedal, and make sure that you like just take a Sharpie and mark where you like the knobs to be. Like by this point, I kind of know like just visually where to go with them, but I definitely would use the marking the knobs method. I mean, I take it out of my suitcase and every knob is every which way. It's just gone. It's gone.
What do you consider essentials for having on your pedal board? If you were just getting started, somebody's, obviously a preamp, and then what else?
An overdrive pedal, a boost pedal, and reverb. And that's it. And that's actually what I play with. It's the Spark Boost, the TC Electronic Spark Boost that has overdrive on it.
Right.
It has the option to have the overdrive on it. Hall of Fame reverb. And I use those three in conjunction with the mid boost on the preamp to get three different colors. The knobs get turned every which way, and all of my previous settings are gone. But that's actually okay for me sometimes, because depending on, I'm going direct, I'm not going through an amp. So the way that I sound depends a lot upon the room that I'm playing in, the speakers that they have, the band that I'm playing with, what I'm up against. So I might change them a little bit more than I think I do every time I play in a different spot. I think it's generally within, there's a tolerance there. It's within a range, but I really use my sound check time to make sure that I sound the way that I want to sound. And that does include switching those things up a little bit sometimes.
How do I want my cello to sound? Do I want to have options that are just acoustic and like that are like the most beautiful cello-y sound? Do I want like reverb and delay, or just hall? Like, what do I want to sound like on a regular basis? So this is my first pedal, right? This is an essential to any pedal board for me. It's the LR Bags Para Acoustic DI. And the reason why is because this right here is what will help me sound like cello all the time. I have different options. Like if I'm working with dancers, I like to have enough options for me to build sound. And so this right here, you know my handy dandy. Oh, the RC505, it's a beautiful thing. Yay. This is the reason why I like this is because it has everything I need. It has everything I need. And it just has like a bunch of delay and reverb and and robotic sounds and like beats that are not corny and and you can plug in other things to make more, and it's super duper light. Look how I'm holding that. Woo. I mean, I work out, but like this thing is super light.
So are you locking everything down onto a pedal board, or does your stuff sort of float?
No, I it floats because sometimes I'll use my hands, and so I'll have it on a music stand, and sometimes I will have it on the floor if I'm just playing cello and I'm not vocalizing, and I just need to be able to move around more and not have to put my bow down or like stop playing to press. The flexibility is also in the fact that I have two things that I have to plug in, this and this, the end. I don't have commitment issues. I just don't want to lock anything in. I don't. And also because like some days I might take this and like the Ocean's 11 is all I need because it has like all this delay and all these different like ways to like just make the cello more and three-dimensional, and that's two pedals.
So you actually look at each gig and what do I need for that gig, and then you bring the gear you need for that.
Right. I have some things that I interchange for the most part to create my sound, but I don't like bringing a whole bunch of stuff that I'm not going to use because I already got to bring a big giant cello.
I first got a multi-effects processor when I was 16 and playing guitar, and it was an old Boss ME6. And processors are great if you're a beginner because for a couple $100 you can get all this stuff in one little box. But once I figured out what I like and I wanted to get sound specific, I built a pedal board. I kind of went extreme. I have, I'll show you my pedal cam. This is, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I have 10 pedals on here, and then I add things on in addition. There's, the basics. People ask me, what should I buy first, who are new to this whole pedal effects thing? And I say there's about 5 or 6 that are like the basic food groups that I think you'll realistically use on most of your gigs in a variety of genres. So the first one I would say wah is you could use it in rock, in hip hop, in funk, especially. Delay is one that you can use a lot. So here's a little, it's a Japanese company called Moore. They make these tiny little pedals and they sound great. There's chorus. Chorus I use a lot when I'm playing in a wedding band and I'm playing disco string parts or any kind of string pad. I use it a great deal. And also if I recorded with a band in the studio and then they can't hire the whole string section. So I'll just come in and I'll make it sound like a string section. So by itself, it might sound a little synthy, but when it's in a mix, in a band, it works. It really sounds good. And then, hey, Rob, what's up, dude?
Hey.
Brother.
Ooh.
The other thing I do, another really cool thing that you could own is an octave or a harmonizer pedal. This is the Harmonist. I have it set to a low octave. It's a Boss Harmonist. There's like so many different pedals that, you know, I'm not going to tell you get this one or get that one. I'll just tell you what I use and what I like. But there's so many cool octave and harmony pedals out right now. And also that's built into the Helix or any effects unit you get. But here's what it sounds like if I'm using chorus and octave combined. Violin purists, you know, say, why do you need effects? I'm like, well, you can do things like that. You can never do that on a real violin. You can't play triads that fast. You can't play triads, period. Now, distortion, if you play a lot of, you know, if you play in a folk band or play a lot of pop, you're probably not going to use a distortion pedal, or, you know, rarely, if ever. But if you play hard rock, metal, you know, it's a great thing to have. I love distortion. I play a lot of solos with distortion. There's so many different gradients and different degrees of distortion. It's like a spice that you can use as much or as little as you want. What I use for my distortion pedal is a Tech 21 Fender Twin amp modeler called the Blonde. And of course, with distortion, you can dial it back and have kind of a clean sound with a little bit of grit. Or you can get it really dirty and grungy. Depends what music you're playing. I was going to say the advantage of having all these separate pedals is you can, on the spur of the moment, say, I want to use this combination of sounds, and I don't want to scroll through a million saved patches and find it. I want to do it now. It's got to be in that musical moment. You know, my stuff is very improvisational, so I'll, you know, combine those three sounds, and I can change a knob easily if I don't like the tone. And in a multi-effects processor, a lot of the stuff, you know, you have to save it and kind of commit to it, and there's the extra step.
Man, some great teaching by some great players. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Follow some other videos. Thank you all for hanging out. We'll see you next time.